So something that's been on my mind a lot recently is being an ally, and what that means and the responsibility that comes with having a platform or creating any sort of, online community or space, and how we keep those spaces safe as allies and how we respond to criticism. There is a very specific situation that I want to talk about, and I do plan on talking about it sometime soon, but there's a lot of research and stuff that's going to go into it, so it's going to take me some time to put that video out, but I wanted to have a space where I can share more generalized thoughts, and hopefully in the future that'll allow people to understand a little bit more of my stance and where I'm coming from. So I was initially not going to share the specific situation that I plan to be talking about in the future, but I sort of realized that my fears of doing so were kind of irrelevant, and I'm going to be talking about it soon, so there's no reason really for the secrecy. I'm going to be diving into the specifics regarding Rachel Oates' EssenceOfThought, also known as Ethel, and rationality rules, some of the recent things that have transpired, etc. I think I was a little nervous because I didn't want to sort of be attacked before I actually made my case known and clear, but I figured being transparent about it now would allow, my viewers to be prepared for what is to come. And if you have the, energy or the desire to look into it a little bit more yourself, maybe under a new lens or with a new perspective, you feel free to do so and share your current thoughts in the comments of this video if you wish. But please do keep in mind that this video is intended to be talking about allyship on a much broader level, as I do not get into the specifics of that situation in this video. So I think this goes for all allies of any marginalized group, whether you're a cis person wanting to be inclusive to trans people, or whether you're a cis man just trying to be inclusive to people who are not men. Whatever the specifics of the situation is, I think we need to have more awareness of the society that we are a part of and the biases that society has ingrained in us. I think being an ally requires an active awareness of those biases in order for us to deconstruct them. So let's talk about, being a trans ally. The problem I am seeing amongst a lot of YouTubers who have appointed themselves, in some sense of the word, as a trans ally in leftist spaces, as well as atheist spaces, because this is a pretty big problem amongst online atheist communities. And that's what I'll be diving into in the future, but not today. There lies this intense and vitriolic defense and response to being accused of transphobia. I feel like this is a complete and utter failure when it comes to understanding how transphobia manifests and knowing that it's not always a conscious action or choice, or even a desire to take away rights from somebody or promote stereotypes or discriminatory beliefs that could lead and popularize rights being taken away from a specific group of people, in this case, trans people. Often those things, I think, are products of the social structures and the privilege that comes with being cisgender. I think it's also important to say that transphobia isn't a synonym for evil or being irredeemable or just a terrible, horrible human being. And far too often I see that being the way it's perceived by the person who wants to be an ally being accused of not being a very good one, if one at all. It's often taken as a heinous insult rather than an opportunity to learn and grow. I would even go as far as saying a lot of these spaces have outright villainized trans persons for the accusation of transphobia. And that act itself is inherently transphobic, because that's not how you show that you're an ally to trans people. All that you're doing is setting a precedent that you're not willing to provide any space or room for guidance or correction from the very group that you want to support. Now, that is not to say if you are a cis content creator, you must then agree with every piece of criticism you hear that is coming from a trans person in regards to your allyship to trans people. Trans people are not a monolith. No group is. But I do think that allowing them the space to criticize you without using your platform to send that person backlash is vital to being a good ally. And if you personally feel that what this person is saying isn't representing you correctly, or isn't accurate to who you are, what you believe, or what you've said or done, your response should never be to call them a liar or to present them as some kind of malicious villain to your self-appointed heroism. The answer also isn't to force your way into their space to engage with a debate with trans people about what is or isn't transphobic, or to weaponize your intent versus outcome against trans people to say, this isn't what I meant, so therefore I'm not transphobic. It's just not your place or anyone's place as an ally. I think the best and only thing that any ally should do in face of criticism from whatever group they are trying to advocate for or support is to use your platform and let your work speak for itself. Refocus on showing your allyship with the actions and the work that you're doing. I think this topic also touches a bit on the last video I made regarding Nick is Not Green, where we were talking about the problem with men who are very vocal about being anti-misogynistic and anti-toxic masculinity, turning around and getting extremely offended when they face any sort of minor criticism or doubt from the very people that they're advocating for. If your immediate response as a self-proclaimed ally is very reactionary and defensive, rather than sitting back and reflecting and trying to understand the criticism you're receiving, where it's coming from, and why this group may be wary of your allyship or distrusting of you, falling back to like very reactionary defensive takes, it's not being a good ally. It just isn't. A lot of times those reactionary responses are actually feeding into the distrust of your intentions, because they're going to start feeling unsafe in this space that you've carved out for them. I also want to add that I think it is extremely dangerous to set a precedent that being accused of being transphobic or homophobic or misogynistic or racist is defamatory in some way, actively harms those groups. Even if you disagree, or even if they are not true, we cannot normalize calling out someone for those behaviors or bigotry as being defamatory in nature. Carving that pathway is only going to further contribute to silencing this group of people and emboldening their oppressors. Those people are going to start walking on eggshells and be scared to provide any sort of actual constructive feedback on what you're doing or what you're saying. It's just so bizarre to me, because I feel like most people understand the concept that we can all do better, that none of us are at our very best. You know, we hear it a lot when people want to weaponize their imperfection as if that excuses every mistake they've ever made, because they can't be perfect and they can't do everything. But I feel like the goal should always be to be better, because oftentimes we can't always see ourselves as clearly as everyone else can in terms of how we're utilizing our platform. You know, it's easy to look back a year from now or 5 years from now and think about what you could have done better. It's a lot harder to look yourself in the mirror now and think about what you could do better now. It's hard and it's uncomfortable, but we have to get more comfortable talking about it rather than villainizing everybody that doesn't like us or criticizes us for not doing enough. We have to be okay with the fact that we're not doing enough, and be okay with the fact that if we want to advocate for a marginalized group, then we have to provide space for them to talk. Whether that be, you know, in our comment section or creating their own space where they're able to sort of decide for themselves who feels safe to them in terms of, you know, their online communities. On top of that, if you're not allowing room for improvement, many of like your supporters or viewers or readers, whatever it is, who stick around, they're going to second guess themselves if and when they do want to make a suggestion or a correction to something you said. They're going to be scared that you're going to react with the same defensiveness that you've already displayed, because you made it that way. You've created a space where the very people you're speaking for don't have their own voice or say in what you're doing. I want to clarify here that it's not enough to only allow room for those who agree with you or think you're doing everything right. That's easy. It's also not enough to only allow criticism that is sugar-coated or perceived as polite. Someone saying something or criticizing you in a way that is very blatant or blunt or lacking politeness does not make them wrong in their criticisms. We have to allow space for the criticism that we don't like, as long as said criticism isn't outright contradictory to what we are trying to do or our morals and ethics. So, for example, if someone who is blatantly transphobic were to come and criticize you or spew transphobic ideologies, obviously nobody is obligated to validate those perceptions or provide space for those people to talk on their platforms or in their comment section. As allies, the most that we can do is strive to be the best we can be, and then even better, because there's always room to do better, and that's okay. That's a part of being human, right? Nobody's perfect. We all know it. We don't need to hear everyone say it every time they get criticized. I'm not perfect. Duh. I'm so tired of hearing that line in response to criticism. As if we don't know that we aren't fucking perfect. But the lack of perfection shouldn't be an excuse to stop growing. That's kind of the point. And in order to do that, we can't shut down conversation, criticism, or skepticism or distrust regarding our intentions. We also can't afford to be afraid or verbally aggressive in response to being called out for bigotry in any form, whether it's being transphobic or racist. Those words are not slurs, despite what some of the radical right wing may like to have you believe. But even for those on the left who would agree that they're not slurs, then stop reacting like they are. It's also very disconnected from reality and even disingenuous when supposed allies react to criticism or accusations of bigotry as if it's the worst thing to ever happen to them. In some cases, it can come off as though they think being called transphobic by a trans person is some kind of coordinated attack or hate campaign against them. I know it's a bitter pill to swallow, but the truth is, whatever hurt and pain someone may feel in response to being called transphobic, it's pretty trivial in comparison to the hurt and pain trans people face every day for merely existing. That's not to say everyone doesn't deserve a space to feel their feelings. Of course they do. We all do. But there is a responsibility that comes with having a platform. And I think a part of that responsibility, at least, is an awareness that not all of your feelings belong in that space at that time. Even if they will agree that it's not a slur, they still react like it's the worst thing ever to be called such a thing. It seems to be just people really getting stuck in their own emotions and just being very reactive, or like fearing what people will think of you, or not being comfortable in the fact that some people aren't going to like you or like what you're doing or what you're saying. If you are trying to create an online space, people aren't going to always like you. Sometimes the reasons are going to be justified and sometimes they won't be. You have to be okay with it either way. I don't think we should really necessarily be running from it either or sticking our heads in the sand. I think we can use it and learn from it if needed, or let it serve as motivation to prove that you are better or that you can do better, just by creating content that amplifies and showcases who you are and what you represent. I'm just been growing really frustrated with the instinct so many of us have to just sort of victimize ourselves in the face of criticism. And a lot of times it goes back to the concept of being canceled, the fear of being canceled, the culture around being canceled and how it's been weaponized by both the right and the left as, a way to sort of victimize yourself. Like, oh, you've been canceled, even though you're still the loudest voice in the room. I'm not as concerned necessarily with people perceiving me in a negative way. I'm more concerned with my response to it and being able to take it in and sort of focus on trying to be the best that I can be and just be okay with people having their space to feel whatever it is that they're feeling. Interestingly enough, I think that trauma therapy has helped a lot with that. And, not everybody really has those tools if they've never experienced trauma or they've never received therapy for it. But a lot of trauma therapy is grounding yourself and not allowing yourself to be reactionary. Because many times when you get triggered, you sort of find yourself in this fight or flight response, which I think can be a similar space to how you feel when you feel like you're being cornered, or you perceive an attack happening where there might not actually be an attack. And honestly, I truly think knowing just how stressful being online can be with whatever platform you're using, even when you're just starting out, I think it's really beneficial for everyone to just look into getting a good therapist. Like, seriously, I think it's the best thing you can do for yourself, and also the best thing you can do for whatever community that you're building. And yeah, I guess that's it. That's my thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments, what your thoughts are. If there's specific situations where you feel like you've seen this happen with YouTubers, you're welcome to share that. Just be sure to check the rules and guidelines in the description for what is okay and not okay in the comment section. I think this topic is obviously most important to the communities and the people that are, sort of viewing this content, because you're the ones that are most impacted by what YouTubers or content creators or whatever are, putting out there. So yeah, please feel free to let me know what you think. Don't forget to like or dislike the video, and subscribe if you so choose, if you're not already, or check to make sure you are still subscribed. And I will catch you in the next one. Special voice shout out to my top patron, Queen of Beams, my Rice Crisp snack, Birdie, and my mod mates, Laur A and Sarah Z.